According to Hauser, public problems are problems that affect all members of a community and therefore call for general attention and public solution. In addition, public problems are not necessarily problems in and of themselves, but are deemed so within our cultural system. To discuss the rhetorical structure, definition, cause, and solution, and other characteristics of a public problem, I'd like to share a public problem currently taking place in my neighborhood. A few months ago, a man decided to purchase a home in my residential area. After the house was purchased, he invited residents in the neighborhood to an open house, declaring his plans to use the house as a rehabilitation center. Once this transitioned into public awareness, community members became outraged. The transition is called rhetorical accomplishment, and it became a public problem because the location of the rehab center would greatly affect the lives of the surrounding neighbors. The implications of the drug rehab center became immediately apparent. People voiced concerns over safety, devaluations of their homes, and a possible expansion in the future. Bob Cheek, an owner of a home in short proximity to the rehab center, took ownership of the problem. According to Hauser, ownership refers to the ability to create and influence the public definition of a problem, and members of the public attending to an issue look to them for information, definition, analysis, arguments, and solutions to the problems. Bob Cheek has organized meetings, picketings, and email chains. His views are taken very seriously, insomuch that a lawsuit has been filed to help find a solution and ensure that the owner of the rehab center will only be able to open future business in commercial areas, preventing other communities from facing the same fate. Here are some of the emails sent by Bob Cheek. This one here includes picketing hours strategically timed when rehab patients and their families will be arriving. In addition, this sign was placed in front of the yards of almost every home in our neighborhood. Hauser also emphasized that groups can disown public problems by acts of word and deed which distance them from the problem. Disownership is a rhetorical strategy that hides our alternatives when making political choices. This occurred with the rehab center problem when community members approached the city's mayor for support. The mayor could not do much about the problem. He stated that the federal government has passed laws classifying persons in drug rehab as disabled. He chose to distance himself from the problem, therefore disowning it.
Up to this point, we focused a lot on ownership and the owners of certain problems. Hauser takes us a step further and talks about responsibility for problems. He says that there are two types of responsibility. The first type is called causal responsibility. Hauser defines causal responsibility as the belief about a sequence of occurrences that factually accounts for the existence of a problem. To put this in a real-life situation, think about a group of children and their parents over at a house for a party. One of the children is running around, acting wild, acting reckless, and he eventually trips and falls and knocks over an expensive vase. Causal responsibility would say that the child is responsible for knocking over the vase. The sequence of occurrences that led to this event happening would be his running, his falling, his running into the vase, and knocking it over. The second type of responsibility is called political responsibility. And when Hauser is talking about politics, he doesn't necessarily mean politicians or the government like we think of. He says political responsibility is some office or group is obligated to do something about a problem. Going back to our example, we can imagine that the parents are the group that is responsible or obligated to do something about the problem. We could say that the parent is responsible for the child. To sum that up, the causal responsibility would say that the child is responsible for knocking over the vase, while political responsibility would say that the parent is responsible for the child. So there's a little bit of a difference there. So far, we have focused on the owners of a problem, we focused on the leaders, and obviously they're not the only ones that should have an opinion or do have an opinion. The public, the people that they work with, the members of their groups, are also obligated and have a responsibility to form an opinion. Hauser says that their major role is to form a public opinion and then take it to the leaders. And in order for the leaders to give the people what they want, as we say, they first must know what it is exactly that the people want. So how does this come to be? First, the people must recognize that there is a problem, and then they must recognize that the problem has an effect on them before they actually care. An example going on recently is the scam at Target with the credit cards and people getting hacked and getting money stolen. I'm sure we've all heard about that. As it started happening more and more, the public began to realize that there was a problem. As people maybe we are close to, or maybe we ourselves began to have our own credit cards hacked or to have our own money stolen, we began to see that there was a problem. We began to care about the problem because it kind of hit home for us. The people, or us, then went to the management of Target, and the owners of Target were able to publicize that problem to show that they actually care. Hauser says that this publicity makes us aware of a problem, makes the problem seem important, and it legitimizes the problem. So in summary, the people are to form a public opinion and then take it to the leaders so that they can make a decision. These people who form an opinion and care about a problem are called publics.
Hi, this is Chang, and today I'm going to introduce about public sphere. So what is it? And what does this mean? So I looked up the dictionary and it says public means open to all persons. Sphere means a particular social world. So, can you get the idea of public sphere? Don't worry, me neither. So, before we talk about public sphere, let's talk about Madison Carson. He indicates important link between informed opinion and democratic action. He said, informed opinion with open discussion may be not effective. Then why he thinks it's important? Because it can make a difference. An informed discussion is not polls. Polls is easy to show what a representative obligate of private individuals believe, and it can use to show supporting the opinion of the majority. But it is not credible unless it is with deliberation. So I am able to say deliberation is public sphere. It can arise to some degree whenever two or more people engage in serious discussion of public issue. Because public sphere is a space for public issues or problem, so it's like a town hall. It has two properties, physical properties and discursive properties. But we must know that discursive properties is more important than physical one. So we are able to say a discursive space is public sphere. Because public sphere is about problem, public problem, but there are two kinds of problem, private problem and public problem. So how can we define them? Then what's the difference? Private problem. Yes, this is my problem, not your problem. Then what is the public problem? Yeah, it's tragic. And public problem is you suffer the indirect or direct consequences of others' decision. So such as global warming, public problem, economic crisis. So, when involved in public problem, we must have right to participate. It means access to relevant information and the relevant media, and right of free speech, free to assemble, defend our views. And these conditions are called normative condition. If they don't exist, it is called as one-sided discussion, unexamined assertion, uniform judgment. And public sphere has 6 principles: inclusion, range of appeal, believable appearance, rhetorical salient meaning, tolerance, empowerment of its public. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Cheminant, and I'll be covering the last section of Chapter 5, which focuses on public opinion. First, let's cover the definition. The most important part of Hauser's definition is, quote, a common understanding among the members of a public. That's definitely the simple version of his definition, but it's also the most straightforward. And it also brings us to the next most important part, which is a public. A public does not refer to the public necessarily, but rather a group of people with shared common interests, or as Hauser puts it, prevailing views that are unspoken throughout a community. So essentially, a public could refer to something as large as the LDS Church or as small as the PTA. Knowing a public's opinion on any given subject is crucial in rhetoric. Without it, one's opinion could be unheard and torn apart in a matter of minutes. This is because public opinion is not the same as majority opinion or popular opinion, but public opinion differs from popular opinion because it is marked by the weight of the opinions of those who are actively engaged, the intensity with which the opinion is held, and the duration across time that the opinion holds. Again, that's weight, intensity, and duration. Although popular opinion may have intensity, it's nothing more than popular, so it fades with time and loses its weight pretty quickly. Hauser gives a brilliant analogy as to how one can know the public opinion of a community by comparing our intuition to our physical skin. Just as our physical skin tells us how cold or hot it is outside and how to dress, our social skin, so to speak, can tell us the basic data of our rhetorical environment, or the general feeling of the community that we're trying to appeal to. An example of this would be my husband's hometown of Palmer, Alaska. Although it often goes unspoken, there's definitely a community-held public opinion that favors pro-gun laws. If any person running for political office chose to run on a gun-controlled centered campaign, they would lose their audience entirely before the debates even began because this particular public opinion is held with such weight, intensity, and duration. In rhetoric, we cannot have any hope of appealing to public without first knowing the public opinion. As Hauser mentions, people pay attention to matters that concern them, so if we are to persuade our audience at all, it is up to us to determine the public opinion and then appeal to it, rather than trying to take it down and present our own ideas instead. An example of public opinion being appealed to in the context of rhetoric is easily found in advertisement. Advertisers feed on public opinion to try and draw in their audience while also adjusting their advertisements to appeal to a larger or entirely different public. A more specific example of this is found in the many advertisers that produce toys for primarily boys, but then decide to appeal to the public of little girls as well in hopes of boosting sales and creating a wider market. This most often results in a lot of pink and purple and pastel colors and flowers printed on what is essentially the same toy. While this may seem silly, it actually works really well. By taking into consideration what is most appealing amongst the public of little girls, the advertisers are able to persuade a completely different audience than the one that they usually market to, so that the toy is more fun and suitable for little girls than it was before, even though it's the same toy. In conclusion, when we attempt to appeal to a public, it is important to first be aware of the community's values and concerns, otherwise known as the public opinion, to help us better adjust our rhetorical strategy so that we may be successful in persuading our audience.